The purpose of this video is to describe Robert Lindsey's theory of how the Synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke came into being, and how those three Gospels are related to one another. Lindsey believed that the first stage took place when one of Jesus' disciples, who was an eyewitness to the events, recorded the words and deeds of Jesus in Hebrew. Lindsey believed that the second stage took place when someone translated the Hebrew story into Greek. Lindsey believed that the Greek translation employed a highly literal style of translation, so that many of the Hebrew features of the story were preserved. The next stage took place when someone reorganized the content of the Greek translation. This editor took the stories apart from the teachings, and the teachings apart from the parables. Each of the three types were organized into a separate section of the scroll, which Lindsey referred to as the anthology. Yet another stage took place when someone who knew only the anthology decided to create a continuous narrative out of the literary fragments he saw in the anthology. Lindsey referred to this source as the first reconstruction. One of the features of this source is that it attempted to polish the Greek style of the stories it included. Lindsey believed that the Gospel of Luke is the earliest of our three Synoptic Gospels. The author of Luke had access to two sources, the anthology and the first reconstruction. Luke's method was to select a story either from the anthology or the first reconstruction to include in his own gospel. Lindsey believed that the second of our Synoptic Gospels is the Gospel of Mark. The author of Mark also had two sources, the anthology and the Gospel of Luke. Mark's method was to select some stories from Luke, to edit them partly on the basis of the anthology, with the result that the Gospel of Mark is an edited and epitomized form of the Gospel of Luke. Lindsey believed that the third of our Synoptic Gospels is the Gospel of Matthew. The author of Matthew also had access to two sources, the anthology and the Gospel of Mark. Matthew was able to share some stories with the author of Luke that had been omitted by the Gospel of Mark because he used the anthology, which Luke had also used. The result was the Gospel of Matthew. To review the stages of the gospel transmission, first there was the Hebrew life of Jesus. Second, there was the Greek translation of the Hebrew source. Then came the anthology, which reorganized the material, and the first reconstruction, which selected some of the anthology stories, polished their style, and created a continuous narrative. Next came the Gospel of Luke, followed by the Gospel of Mark, followed in turn by the Gospel of Matthew.